The 3rd of May 1999 did not begin as a historic day. It began like so many others in central Oklahoma, warm, quiet, and deceptively calm. People went to work, children sat in classrooms, and families moved through their routines without knowing they were already inside one of the most dangerous weather setups ever recorded. The air was heavy, unstable, and waiting. Meteorologists had been watching it all day, and by the afternoon, they knew something was wrong. Not just a typical storm day, something far worse. Something rare. Something that had the potential to rewrite what people thought a tornado could even do. By mid-afternoon, the warnings intensified. A powerful storm system was developing across the region. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico was colliding with cooler, drier air from the west. Above it all, strong winds were tearing across the atmosphere at different speeds and directions, creating violent wind shear. This is the kind of setup meteorologists fear most. It doesn't just produce storms. It produces supercells, the kind that rotate, organize, and sometimes give birth to the most destructive tornadoes on Earth. And then, it happened. Around 5:32 p.m., a tornado touched down near Chickasha, Oklahoma. At first, it looked like many others, a rotating funnel. Dangerous, but not yet extraordinary. But within minutes, something changed. The storm began to intensify rapidly, almost explosively. The rotation tightened. The funnel widened. The winds accelerated beyond anything most instruments had ever measured. What started as a threat was becoming a monster. By the time it moved toward the Oklahoma City metropolitan area, it was no longer just a tornado. It was a record-breaking force of nature. This tornado would later produce wind speeds estimated at over 300 miles per hour, the highest ever recorded on Earth using mobile Doppler radar. Think about that for a second. Winds stronger than most hurricanes, faster than a Formula One car at top speed, powerful enough to strip the ground itself. This was an F5 tornado on the Fujita scale, the most violent classification possible. But even that label didn't fully capture what was coming. As the tornado approached the suburbs south of Oklahoma City, including Bridge Creek and more, the sky turned a deep, unnatural black. Not gray, not stormy, black. Rain wrapped around the tornado, hiding its full shape. For many people, there was no clear visual warning, no dramatic funnel in the distance. Just darkness, hail, sirens, and a growing sense that something was terribly wrong. Emergency broadcasts broke into programming with urgency rarely heard before. Meteorologists were no longer calmly explaining radar patterns. They were pleading, telling people to take cover immediately, telling them this was life-threatening, telling them this was not a normal tornado. And still, for many, it was already too late. As the tornado tore into Bridge Creek, entire homes were erased in seconds. Not damaged, not partially destroyed, gone. Foundations swept clean. Vehicles hurled hundreds of meters through the air. Trees stripped bare or completely uprooted. The force was so extreme that even well-built houses offered little protection above ground. Survivors would later describe the sound as something beyond a train, beyond a jet, more like the ground itself being ripped apart. Then it moved toward more. And this is where the nightmare became unforgettable. Moore, Oklahoma, a growing suburb filled with neighborhoods, schools, shopping centers, and families, found itself directly in the path of one of the most powerful tornadoes ever recorded. The storm did not weaken. It did not slow. It grew wider, stronger, more violent. The debris cloud became so dense that it turned day into night. Inside homes, families huddled in bathrooms, closets, hallways, anywhere they had been told might save them. Parents covered their children with their own bodies. Some prayed, some screamed. Some sat in silence, waiting for impact. Then the tornado hit. Roofs were torn off instantly. Walls collapsed inward. Entire houses disintegrated as if they had never existed. Cars were picked up and flung like paper. In some areas, the ground was scoured so violently that grass and soil were ripped away. One survivor later described opening their eyes after the storm passed and realizing there was nothing left. No house, no street, no landmarks, just debris in every direction.
is what we have the storm tracker set for.
Look how big this thing is, you guys.
Brady.
On I-35 of Norman.
Yes.
There, look at that.
It's raining. It's very cloudy.
Let's get a good view of this thing.
They are northwest. This is Rick Mitchell. East of you, I believe.
Shoot, that's huge. That's a freaking F5.
And it went due
Got an
east.
F5.
The wind is now blowing out of the east here.
Leave it open.
We don't have any rain anymore, but we had a lot of rain for a heavy rain for about 5-10
Yeah,
minutes.
core.
We had hail, a quarter.
Wow, look at the size of that.
Gulf south
Wow.
here, and I'm just 4.5 miles south of
Is that coming our way?
And any damage that you're aware of, Michelle?
Right
It's in
now,
that
I don't
town.
see- Not any damage to that place that I see, but it was, far enough away I can't see it.
A hospital in the area took a direct hit. Medical staff rushed patients into safer areas as windows exploded and sections of the building were torn apart. Miraculously, many inside survived, but the damage was severe. Across Moore, entire neighborhoods were flattened. Blocks that had once been filled with life were now reduced to unrecognizable fields of wreckage. And yet, even in the middle of this destruction, stories of survival began to emerge. A mother shielding her child in a bathtub, taking the full force of debris while the child lived, neighbors pulling strangers from rubble with bare hands. Emergency responders rushing into areas that still felt unstable, still dangerous, because people were trapped and time mattered. These moments didn't stop the destruction, but they defined what came after. The tornado continued its path, eventually weakening as it moved northeast. By the time it finally dissipated, it had carved a path of destruction over 38 miles long and up to a mile wide. Dozens of lives were lost, hundreds were injured, thousands of homes were damaged or destroyed. The financial cost ran into the billions. But numbers alone cannot explain what was taken that day. Because what Moore experienced was not just a storm. It was a complete collapse of normal life. In a matter of minutes. In the immediate aftermath, the silence was overwhelming. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that follows something violent. The kind filled with distant sirens, faint cries for help, and the unsettling absence of everything that used to be there. People wandered through debris, calling out names, searching for loved ones, trying to understand what had just happened. Emergency crews arrived as quickly as they could, but the scale of destruction made everything difficult. Roads were blocked, landmarks were gone, communication systems were overwhelmed. And yet, help came from nearby towns, from across the state, from people who simply saw what happened and knew they had to show up. The days that followed were filled with grief, but also with something else: determination.
Oh shit! Getting hit! I'm sliding, you guys! Help! Ah! Fuck! Glass! I need him with glass! They're going across the road! Power flash! Power flash! Get that! Holy shit. I'm going to get it, Rick. Videotape me. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. Look at this. Right behind you, man. Oh, jeez. We're going after it. Look at that.
War did not stay down. Homes were rebuilt, schools reopened, businesses returned. The scars remained both visible and invisible, but the community refused to let the tornado define its future. Instead, it became part of its identity, a reminder of vulnerability, yes, but also of strength. Even today, the Moore tornado of 1999 is remembered not just because of its record-breaking winds, but because it changed how people understand severe weather. It reshaped warning systems. It influenced building codes. It forced meteorologists and emergency planners to rethink what was possible and what needed to be done to protect lives in the future. But for the people who lived through it, it is remembered in a much simpler way. It was the day everything changed. The day the sky turned black. The day the wind became something unstoppable. The day survival became the only thing that mattered. And the day a community proved that even after facing one of the most powerful forces ever recorded on Earth, it could still stand back up. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what moment hit you the hardest. Was it the speed of the storm, the unimaginable wind power, or the stories of survival in the middle of chaos? If you want more real disaster stories told like this, hit like, subscribe, and stay with the channel. Because sometimes the most terrifying stories aren't fiction, they're the ones that actually happened.